Okay, so the aim is to be as confident, as motivated, as focused. So today the emphasis is going to be on self-talk, which is really important. Once again, as I've always said before, well done to everybody, getting up early on Monday after you sort of trained over the weekend. And this is a good time to do what we're doing. I've mentioned that before. So we sort of looked at some video footage earlier. You made some really great points, guys, by the way. Some fantastic points about, the video earlier, which is great. So it shows me you're learning a lot and you've got a lot of knowledge and sort of getting on the right track. So when we talk about self-talk and we think about, who the most important person is that we communicate to, who's the most important person? And you might be thinking at this point here, okay, who's the most important person we communicate to? Ourselves really. And you might think, what's he talking about? The most important person we communicate ourselves. Well, I'll talk more about it as we go along. In the book that I sent you, if you don't have it, email me, I'll send it through again. The resource manual, it's chapter 6, self-talk. And here we sort of talk about how we're often our biggest critic. Some of the things we say to ourselves, we wouldn't say to anybody else. So staying positive in the messages you tell yourself has an effect on what happens and what you do. Words have power, guys. Think of some of the most inspirational speeches you've heard. A word can affect people because for them, the association of that word may have a deep implication or meaning. The same can be said about words spoken in a positive way. Thank you, please, well done. And this is really important, guys. You encourage your teammates. This is a great group. 100, I mentioned before, you're amongst 100 of the most talented players in Australia for me at the moment. And you're training well, you're working hard. And it's about sort of getting and rallying around each other and being positive with each other and encouraging each other as well. You think about it for a moment, you sit in the dressing room before the start of the game and the coach just says the right words. Or perhaps, you're in a game and you don't get acknowledged for what you do. I think of the difference of how you feel when a coach sort of acknowledges you, gives you genuine praise. Or when you do something really, really well and you don't get it. There's a difference in the way you feel. There's a lot of research around this that more optimistic teams create positive synergy than pessimistic teams. So positive thought is better than negative. So communication, all the people who communicate, interact on a daily basis, the most important person I mentioned earlier is yourself. Self-communication. We're often our biggest critic. And as I mentioned earlier, I can communicate myself. What are you on about? That inner dialogue. And we're often our biggest critic and has a big influence on how we feel. How we feel has an impact on how we perform. Okay, how I feel. If I feel confident that I'm going to perform better, if I feel motivated, if I feel I've got self-belief. And psychologists and neuroscientists say that we have about 150 to 300 words a minute, depending on what research you read. But there is a lot of dialogue going on, 45 to 51,000 words a day, and most of it's harmless. Like activities, you're thinking, well, I've got to, get to the bus to school or get a lift, or I've got to buy something from the shop or what's on TV. But where it becomes really, really significant in sport is if we sort of speak to ourselves in a negative way, like I'm not good enough to play at this level. I'm useless. I always mess things up. I can't handle pressure. Always lose on penalties. I haven't got the natural ability to play sports. So we start telling ourselves this over and over again. It's an ongoing reinforcement. It becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to choose our words carefully that we say to ourselves and our teammates too. So in a dialogue, it results in creating limiting beliefs if we tell ourselves negative things. And sometimes these can come from coaches, parents, friends, whatever really. They may not mean any harm by it, but some of the things they might say in a negative way. So you might get a teacher saying, well, I don't think you can do this, or, I don't think you'll be able to go on and do a master's or PhD. The coach might say, I don't believe you can play professionally. And they may have their opinion, but this sort of sticks in our head. We've got to be mindful of that. One might hear the voice of, a teacher years ago who said something, or that's not going to go at teachers or coaches. It's just saying that things creep into our mindset. In research that suggests that for the ratio of positive comments to negative to be at least 5-1 for a healthy relationship to survive. So if you've got, around friends, if the ratio is less than 5-1, the relationship starts to break down. And that's why it's really important not to let anyone else put you down as well. So if anyone sort of puts you down, even in jest, okay, play it back like a tennis match. Don't keep it, just drop it completely. Your self-talk can shape your ability to perform in sports in a big way. And we know that, and that's a really important thing. And it can increase stress levels, limit potential, and influence our outlook on an experience. So the way we speak to ourselves about a situation has a big impact. If you sort of say to yourself, I'll never be good at this, I don't deserve this, I'm hopeless, it's not for me, all that sort of cycle, the subconscious starts to believe that. And you start thinking, why should I try anyway? So my experience of working with sports people, footballers, coaches, sometimes you see it, the coaches will say to the players, don't lose the ball. And they put that image in the person's head, don't foul. And they do exactly what they tell them not to do. So, I really say, don't lose the ball, keep possession. Don't miss the target, hit the target. Okay. And I spoke to a player years ago, for example, and it was really interesting because some of the dialogue he would say to himself, he wouldn't say to anybody else. And we really worked hard with a player I was working with a few years ago. It was in League Two, a League Two player, and his inner dialogue was just incredible. So negative about himself and many other things. We worked really, really hard on that. And what I want you to do is an exercise, and we'll talk more about this shortly, is take a moment to write down something you say to yourself and imagine the effect they're having on you. It's not just in football, guys. This is in life in general. This is in academic. This is anything you want to achieve. It's not just about football, it's about life too. Think about that. And the exercise that we do, and I've done, and we'll go into more detail, and I'll send you some work to do too, is sort of being mindful. In the context of football, think about how you describe your ability as a footballer to participate in football, okay? How would you describe yourself as a footballer? So when you go on trial, it's really important that you set a big impression. So you go in there and in the days where the handshake, a nice firm handshake or whatever they do around the world, this might be a fist, whatever it is. But the point being, you go in there, you're firm, you've got your back straight, your shoulders back, and you mean business. And if a coach says to you, well, how do you describe yourself as a footballer? Then you're very positive. It's, you're not sheepish and hold back, and you're sort of really positive about how you express yourself, being confident in yourself. And that's the sort of key. And I want to work on this, how you describe yourself and your ability, and anything negative used to describe your ability, then we've got to turn it into a positive statement. It's really important, because think about it this way. One way to imagine this, if you were, imagine, call it the elevator pitch. If you were in an elevator and you had 20 seconds and there was a football manager of a big club and says, and asks you, okay, tell me a bit more about you as a footballer. And if what you said depended on the impression he or she got of you, think about what you would say about yourself and the impact that would make. And that's sort of really important to do that. And that's not just in football, that's, in life in general. How am I describing myself in the context of what I do, which is key. Have a moment to think about that, and we'll come back to that shortly and discuss that in more detail, which is really, really important that we sort of discuss that in more detail. Absolutely, I think so. Nerves can affect your game. It depends how we channel those nerves. That's the key. So sometimes, we might feel a bit apprehensive, it depends how we channel that. That's the key. But think about it for a moment. Look at some of the world-class footballers under pressure. Now, the other night I was watching on TV a game. On TV, I was watching the Italy-Switzerland game, and you saw even players with technical ability, like Jorginho, missed the penalty in the last minute, I think it was. You know, so I don't know how he trains. I don't know him, anything like that, the comment. But the point I'm making, doesn't matter how technical you are, when the pressure's on, we can go to type. And that's the really important thing, is sort of you break that, which is sort of key. So the idea is really sort of to channel for you also, not just in football, to present yourself in the most positive way, also in life in general. If you're going to have an interview for a job, if an interview academic, they're important things. So be mindful, and be mindful if you're sort of describing yourself in a way that someone else may describe you that's not conducive to you. That's the sort of key. You know, write your own script, guys. Be the author of your own life. You know, that's the sort of key going forward. So do the exercise, spend some time